Welcome to the High Voltage Light Electric Vehicle channel. This video is a look at the range that I'm getting with my Photon motor, plus a few other observations and a bit of news on some new motors, if you make it that far. I'm still working on the full review, but I'm finding time really hard to come by right now. If you have a question still on the Photon, or there's something you want me to look at though, post it in the comments and I'll put it as part of that big video. I've been getting lots of questions on range though, which I couldn't answer very well in the comments. So this video will look at the range with my Photon setup, and you can extrapolate your own scenario based on whether you have a heavier bike and rider combination. There are lots of other variables that also affect how far an e-bike can go, but hopefully this will give people a ballpark number and help them when they're deciding what kind of battery and what size of battery to get for this motor. The video footage here is from the ride that I used to do the first of these range calculations. It's quite long, so I'm going to leave it playing when the talking part of the video is done, and you're welcome to watch it or skip it as you please. It's down a route that I take so that I can go and see my friend, and it's one that I quite like. This represents the kind of mixed riding that I see myself doing a lot with this bike. I picked this route to make the calculation because it has some hills at the start and finish, but it's not all hills, so hopefully it's more representative of an average ride than if I was to just ride around town where it is all hills. Some other factors to note when comparing your own setup to this one are the bike and rider weight for me is a combined 220 pounds approximate, and my tyres are a gravel type about 2 inches wide, and my wheel size is 700C. So the total distance over 2 legs of this trip was 44 kilometers, and I recorded the voltages of the battery at the start, the middle and the end of the trip, and I used that information to calculate the watt hours of the battery. And I've split it into 2 parts because the second part of the trip has more uphill, and I wanted to see how much more battery that it ate up. I think I've got the maths right here, but I'm not a super mathematician, so feel free to correct me because I'm not really an expert here. I'm also aware that the discharge curve of cells is not perfectly linear, but it should provide a rough calculation. Basically all I'm doing is assuming a working voltage range of 15 volts from the 57 volt starting point to a total depletion of 42 volts. And I divided the capacity of the battery, which at that point is 1300 watt hours, by the 15 volt range, and that gives me 86.6 watt hours per volt drop. And okay, it's not perfect because of the discharge curves, but it should be good enough. So for the first 22 kilometers, the voltage drop was 2.5 volts, which multiplied by 86.6 gives me a total consumption of approximately 216 watt hours. Now divided that by the 22 kilometers gives me 9.84 watt hours per kilometer. The CYC Ride app actually estimates that I used 4 kilowatt hours per kilometer. After I got back home, the battery had dropped a further 3 volts, meaning that I consumed a further 260 watt hours. And this makes sense because on the way back there was more uphill, so you would expect a greater consumption. The distance overall was the same though, so 260 divided by 22 gives me 11.81 watt hours per kilometer. And the CYC Ride app said this time that I used 9 watt hours per kilometer, so it's a bit closer to what I actually used. I couldn't find anywhere in the CYC Ride app where I could put the capacity of the battery, and I'm not quite sure what the minimum voltage part is for, whether that's to set a low voltage cutoff or something. It doesn't really say. I'm not sure how it would affect the accuracy of the consumption. It would be useful if there was a bit more information on some of these parameters. But if you can't set the capacity, I'm not really sure how the consumption can ever be particularly accurate. And I don't know how they're doing it, so I can't say for certain. It does feel that with the trip information that this seems to be one of the more buggy parts of the app, and perhaps this can be improved in the future. Anyway, for a total consumption over the ride, it was 475 watt hours from a potential capacity of 1300 watt hours. So if 475 watt hours got me 44 kilometers, in theory, if this is an average of 10.8 watt hours, then 1300 watt hours divided by 10.8 should give me a top range of about 120 kilometers. In reality, not all of that 1300 watt hours capacity is ever going to be actually usable, so the real range is going to be lower than this. But I think it's fair that I would at least be able to get maybe 90 kilometers with the current battery that I have and this setup. I have a longer ride that's 65 kilometers to the halfway point, so that should give me a really good indication as to how accurate my numbers are. And honestly, I'm quite pleased with that, because a good chunk of this riding was done at 800 watts of assist. So as I get stronger, I'm going to be doing much more of the riding at 500 watts and try and fit in some stretches at just 300 watts. And that really ought to push the range well over 100 kilometers. And that puts a lot of places that I'd like to go to within range of this, certainly within range of somewhere where I'd be able to get a top-up charge. I'm going to give my full thoughts on this motor when I free up some more time. Overall though, I'm seriously impressed with it, and it's really fun to ride, and I'm using my bike like I used to pretty much, and I can already feel some of the benefit that I'm getting from the exercise. Effectively, it lets me get out and about and cover distances at a respectable speed. If I went up to the 50T at the front, I think a road speed of 60 kilometers an hour is easily achievable as a sustained cruising speed. With the gearing I have, the cadence required becomes a bit fast to reliably get above 50 kilometers an hour and hold it there. If you have already one of those 11 or 12 speed 11 to 50T cassettes, it would really be, I think, the ideal range, because the 1-to-1 would get you up the steepest hills. And then you could also ride on the road at speeds that you'd only normally see with professional road riders with an actual comfortable cadence. And I should say here that you have to de-restrict the speed limit, although for people fitter than me, it would definitely be achievable with the road legal power settings. I think CYC has been really quite clever in who to target with this motor. For me, they're going for people that have nice bikes like mine and want the benefits of an expensive e-bike without paying the eye-watering cost of an expensive e-bike. People have been asking me if they think this is a BBS HD killer, and I think it's definitely going to take sales away from them. But I see it as a potential as a commercial e-bike killer, especially if CYC gets creative with their marketing and can manufacture these in sufficient volume. Look at this scenario. We have a Trek Domain. It costs over $8,000 and comes with a tiny 250 watt hour battery, which is incredibly hard to replace if you need to. Now check this review, because it really encapsulates what you can do with a Photon and makes it much better than anything I think you can get commercially. The gentleman bought the bike to keep up with the group rides that he goes on, except the problem is the cutoff for the motor put him just below the group pace. So effectively an $8,000 investment is pretty much useless to him because he can't do what he wants to. With this, he could have kept his old road bike that he probably really liked. He could have spent about $2,000 on a Photon with a 1500 watt hour battery and be able to keep riding with his group, and all for a quarter of the investment. Because with the Photon, he could lift the speed cap by say a few miles an hour to 32, or even, God forbid, a full-on 34 miles an hour, and keep up with the group. And you can't do that really with the commercial ones. There are so many people, I think, in this scenario, it's almost unreal. Basically anyone with a nice bike that rarely uses it due to hills or a slight injury or lost fitness can get an e-bike that will wipe the floor with anything that the big bike makers can produce. I mean, it's highly likely that you're going to be converting one of their bikes anyway. I think they're definitely going for the more premium end of the market. I mean, $2,000 is a lot of money still for the vast majority of people on the planet. Fortunately, we look set to get some more new motors, which ought to retail significantly less than the Photon. I'm going to go more into detail on my full thoughts on the Photon in my main review, but for now though, just know that I'm really enjoying riding this bike. If there are things that you want me to put in the review, let me know in the comments. If you made it this far, you get to get the news, which is on these new motors which are coming out over the next few months from 27 Motor. These two motors have two variations each and will initially cover the power range from 250 watts to 1000 watts. All of these are torque sensing, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they stack up compared to the Photon, which has a really excellent torque sensor. Right now they're actually listed as the DM01 and the DM02, which is, it's kind of uninspiring, and names are being looked at. You can see them here on these two demonstration bikes. I'm not quite sure why they picked these frames to demo on them, because there are lots of frames where they would sit much higher up on the frame. I'm hearing lots of encouraging things from the company in terms of the way that they want to do business, building a brand and working with distributors and end users. I've been working with their Western representative, who is a salt of the earth kind of guy. He's essentially convinced them to take a different approach to how the motors are sold. The company seems genuinely interested in doing business in a better way than like a race to the bottom, dump it all on AliExpress method. They seem genuinely interested in making a good product that can be repaired, and I'm excited to see how all this goes. It sounds like a lot of thought has gone into eliminating past problems with this style of motor. I'm going to do a bit more of a breakdown of this kind of thing when I do get them, but basically these designs have removed many of the failure points that have plagued these motors at this price point. We do have a few motors on the way, and I'm looking forward to building some stock bikes and of course trying one out with the external controllers and seeing how far we can push them. The company is genuinely interested in what DIY builders are looking for. I know the protocol for the controller is UART, so it's going to be open for people or even companies that want to make custom screens, custom integrations. There's no proprietary closed wall system. We do have a small section on our Discord for the two motors, which will be expanded on greatly. If you're interested, you can join in the conversation there as well as the comments. If you're a dealer, you might want to look at these motors. You can also get in touch with one of their representatives there too. So feel free to ask questions. I am well aware there is quite a lot of rumour and chat rooms regarding these motors, and much of it, let's just say it's not very accurate. I'm hoping to get a Q&A done for most of the common questions, and I'll definitely have more to share on the motors once they arrive. I'm going to sign off here. I'm still working on the full review, but like I say, I am very short on time right now. I'll leave you with the full footage of the ride, but there's no obligation to watch it. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and a special thanks to the channel members. Your support always helps make all this possible. Thank you very much. Cheers.